Welcome back to Inclusive Design 24 for 2024, brought to you in partnership with our Platinum supporters, Barrier Break and Intopia, and our Gold supporters, InfoAxia and Tetralogical. If you can follow us on Mastodon, Blue Sky, LinkedIn, and Twitter, and if you have questions for the presenters or presenter, post them using the ID24 hashtag, or you can use the YouTube chat session. We'll be gathering all of your questions for our Q&A at the end of the session. A reminder that ID24 is a respectful community, and you can find our code of conduct on the Inclusive Design 24 website. I'm delighted to be joined by my guest host, David Swallow. And David, I'm going to hand it straight over to you to take it from here.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. So next up, we have Alessandro Carducci, who is an artist, animator, game developer, video creator, and the founder of Cardeis Art. And he'll be talking about visual and audio alternatives in video games and demonstrating the video game Robin tech. So over to you, Alessandro.
Thank you very much for this introduction. Hello, everyone, and I'm glad to be here. In this talk, I'll talk about the visual and audio alternative in video games. I'll do it showing you some screenshots and also some videos about Robin Tech Netverse, that is an action RPG in the game that I'm developing. And this game is set in a world characterized by medieval and technological world elements. And the protagonist of this world is Lady Query, that is a sorceress that fights for the freedom of information, communication, and connection against the tyranny of the malwares. Let's get started to see the elements that we are going to analyze for this talk. We will start with the visual alternatives, and we are going to talk also about the audio alternatives. We will talk about the text, subtitle, and dialog box based on the game, the color blindness and severity mode, the HUD, that is the adapt display, the visual reinforcement, the camera movement and motion blur, the bloom, the video sequences, the visual input that are going to replace some sound where needed, and vice versa, the sound that are replacing instead visual information. Also, we will talk a bit of music status changes, spatialization sounds, volume classes, and recognizable sounds. So let's start from the text and subtitles and dialog box. Here is a picture of a part of the game where I'm showing you the dialog box of the game. The girl is the protagonist, as I said, and here is an NPC, but we will do it watching some video that I prepared for this occasion. Here is the protagonist in a sort of prototype of the game. She is working and she is going, I'm blocking the video now, she's going to this character, and here we can see a prompt. A prompt is essential for the reading of the element on the screen, because in this case we know exactly that we can interact with this character. We have text. The text is very much important to show in this case. We have also a picture, a little image of the button that we need to press. In this case is the gamepad button, but this is changeable because when we are going to use the keyboard and the mouse in the mechanics is supposed to be changeable for that type of input. Here we have that display with the icon of the protagonist in the left part, and here we have the dialog box. The dialog box in this case is supposed to have a black background. There is this part in the upper part that has the name of the character that is talking, and the name change based on which line is said by the character, and based on also on the character that is talking. And it is very much important to give the player the possibility to understand which character is talking. And we have also the other box that is always with this black color to have a better reading of the text. Here we have a medium text dimension. The language in this case is English, but the language is also changeable. The text is white because the background is black, and so the contrast is better. Let's continue. Here you can see there is a little prompt in the lower part. This prompt is supposed to, like the third one, so you need to press the button to continue the dialogue. This is because we need to talk about the reading time. There are players that have a different type of reading time, so we need to understand that we can, yes, include default reading time, but a good option to add in games should be, of course, add also the possibility to the player to choose their time. So we can deactivate the dialogue time default, and then the player can have all the time he want to continue to read the text on the screen. This text is only short. Here we have the menu. We are going in the settings, and we are going to change the visibility of the subtitle, that in this case is also connected with the dialog box. And in this case, when we talk, there is not a dialog box. Now we are reactivating the dialog box. And now we are going to see the other settings that we are implementing here. Of course, here is again the dialog box again. And now we are going to remove the background opacity and make a different type of background. In this case, transparent background, but not totally. In this case, there is a little bit of blur to give the possibility to the player to read the white text as well. In case there is not background, also as the prompt, we need to include an outline. The outline we included here on the head of the character of the bot is a white text with a black icon, but if the background has a different type of element, maybe could be also okay, make the opposite, so maybe also the white line and the black text. It depends, of course, from the type of background. And in this case, it's a three-dimensional element. So in this case, also, this talk is not part of the head-up display because it's in the game. So this is why we introduced the black line. Another setting that we have introduced to reinforce the view is also the size of the text. Of course, the player can have the needed or maybe one piece the more text, and in some other cases instead it should be better also give the possibility to insert large text and also to return to default at medium text. As you can see here, the text is more larger, and there is also the option of the language, and here I'm changing the language from English to Italian, and not only the prompt is changing the language, but also the part of the dialog box, because language the localization need to change every element on the screen, except for some element like names, maybe in some cases, or other type of element that maybe we want to maintain as well. So here is the version of the Italian one, localization. That's the first video. We return now to the elements here, and we talk about the description and the tooltips. Here I will be a little bit quick. The description and tooltips are very helpful for people to understand better what they are changing from in the settings. And I made an example here in the lower part. You can see that there is the auto lock on active on. But I also included a prompt here that specify which action you are doing. If you are, in this case, is switch on off the auto lock on. So this is an automatic action that can be transformed into manual actions. We will talk it a little bit later. And here are the settings that I talked to you a few minutes ago. And here the prompt in another element that is viewable thanks to the outline. Now we are going to talk about the color blindness and severity. The color blindness and severity are most present in the modern games. We have the filter off, that is the main color in the screen, the main color of the game, the default version. We can see also a specific video about this color blindness mode. This is the off mode. We have mainly three types of color blindness type, but there is also a fourth one. Here we are going to change from the settings the version of the color blind mode from off to deuteranopia, and this is the version of the deuteranopia color blindness mode. In this case, the most affected color is the green, and also a bit of red, the red color. And in the second version instead, we're going to see how the severity can be changed. The severity is very much important because not all blindness people see at the same way. And so the color blindness need to have also a severity changed settings. Like in this case, we are making a low volume for the color blindness mode now, and we are going to reset now the color severity to 10 and active the protanopia version of the color blindness mode. In this case, the most affected color is the red, and the second one is the green. And you can see this also on the characters and also on their clothes. And now we are going to see the tritanopia version. The tritanopia version of the color blindness mode. The most affected color in this case is the blue one and the yellow. And these are the elements that are presented, of course, in most of the game, the contemporary games, but we have not also the deuteranopia, the protanopia or the tritanopia, but we have also achromatopsia. In this case, we have a completely blindness color mode. This is not so much diffused in games, but in some AAA games should be a very great addition, in my opinion. And it would be better to add also in quadruple games as well. But it's not as only a question of color blindness and severity, because we need to consider also the color contrast and the contrast of the text and graphic. Here in the presentation, there is an example that I made. This is the pause menu that we've seen in the video. We have four main colors for the UI that are this green, that is specific for the selected buttons. We have this white for the most important element. In this case, is indicating us that we are in the pause menu. And here we have another type of color for the text, the gray color. And this gray color means that we are not on this voice. This is a not active voice. And so we know where we are navigating in the menu visually. From the point of visualization, we are sure that we are on resume, because there is a button that is having a good contrast with the background that is black. And here we have another picture. This is a tool that I'm using to make a better contrast in the game. This is the accessibility insight tools from Windows, and we have some information here that is giving us the possibility to understand if the ratio of this color are good enough for regular text, large text with a specific dimension in a specific ratio, and also about graphic object and UI components. And this is also important for every part, not only of the graphics, but also for the elements that we are seeing in the screen. Let's talk instead of the HUD. The HUD is the head-up display. We need to consider for this element the size of this element, and also the status change of this element, and avoid as well the overlapping as possible. So in this case, we have two representation of the icon of a lady query. The first icon is an icon, circular icon, that appear when you are in a default state. This indicates that you are not fighting, because in the game, in this type of game, you can fight. And we have some hidden information here. So we have just a picture here. Instead, when we need more information, there is appearing the other type of status bar that is more longer, is not anymore circular. We are in a fight. The graphics become the weapon that she is drawing in her hand. In this case, a magic staff. And Here we have also the 3 bar, but to have an understand of which bar we are seeing here on the screen, there is also an addition of the text. In this case, the text is representing HP, this means health point, the SP, the stamina point, the MP, the Magitech point. In this case, the Magitech is the magic in this game. And the value of the current value of the health and the max value of the health, and so for these other elements here on the screen. And we need to also keep it simple as possible and avoid to include too much element in one time on the screen, because this element can be an element of distraction and confusion for the player and for every type of player, especially for people that have cognitive difficulties. And we need to balance this element on the screen as well. Let's talk instead of visual reinforcement that are very much important. Here we have some example, and after we are going to watch a video. And here we have icons and text that are reinforcing each other. And here we have for the settings menu a specific icon for every setting. Here we have the gameplay settings with the gears icon, the video display, the audio. We wanted to make this because this is a very good reinforcement, because you can understand these reading the word you are navigating, but also you can read easily the settings just watching at the picture. And we have made something similar here for the locking part and the fight part also. So this is a sort of prompt that appears when you're fighting. It is also you can also disable it, but this is helpful at the beginning. This is why need to be hidden sometimes. So we need to give the possibility to the player to hide also tutorial information in case you want to have a more clean desktop. And so the screen will be more clean without this element, but this is helpful to understand which button you need to press and which is the action associated with the button. This is valid for gamepad and also for keyboard and mouse. And instead, here we have another type of reinforcement, always I will say before with the talk. Of course, the icon of the button and again, the word with the outline that is giving us the possibility to understand which action we are going to do with the type of element we are interacting with. Yeah, and let's take a look to the visual reinforcement video now. Here we have again the prompt of the talk and the dialog box that is a visual reinforcement. And there is another dialog here, and after we will see a few other elements of interaction in this video. Now the dialog will finish soon. Here we are going to interact with the tree, that is a sketchy tree. And here we are going to see some other type of prompt. Here we have an open prompt in this case, and we have a reinforcement with an animation, a chest animation, item animation, and also some element here in the screen. As you can see, we have information about the item we have received, the level that let the query reached, but also the experience we get. Some of these elements should be animated, some of them should be blocked. And here we have instead the prompt with the auto lock-on. The auto lock-on will activate when an enemy will be defeated. Here we have also another type of prompt and another type of automatism that is hit the weapon in the back of the character. This type of movement is both automatic and manual. So in this case, she's drawing the weapon automatically, and now she's lock on first character. Now I'll go here and I auto lock on in version off. So now when she attack the enemy, here you can see there is also a prompt about the damage that she is doing to the character. Now when she attack, she is not auto lock on the other character, just because we have removed the auto lock on. And here, yeah, we have also another element that is not really visible, but there is this type of red line that is meaning that we are receiving damage, and same for the character. When you receive damage, is becoming of this type of color, this type of overlap. This is important, and is always a visual information that we need in some way to add to reinforce this type of element. Let's talk instead about camera movement and motion blur. It's important to give the player the possibility to change the camera settings and also the motion blur settings. This because some player maybe want to invert the camera because they can handle better the camera in inverted axis. In this case, the base is inverted camera y-axis to no, and the same for the x-axis. These two types of axes need to be separated between each other, in my opinion, because it's better leave the player choose if you want to or she want to deactivate the y-axis in some way and change it. In the default standard, we are going with the mouse or the gamepad to right. When we are moving the mouse to the right, then we are seeing the element to the right. Of course, I'm talking of element of a third-person game, because in the first-person game, this will be different. But in a third-person game, we need to change. We need to change the camera axis. We need to do it. If we are going to right, the player will then see the right part of the screen. If we are going to left, of course, we are seeing the left part of the screen. Same for the the y-axis. We are going to up, then we are looking at up, and we are going down, we are looking at down. In the inverted version is the opposite. So we are looking right when we are moving the mouse or the thumbstick at left, and vice versa, also for the other axis. And we need to give the possibility to the player to also to change the camera sensitivity. This is because changing the camera sensitivity can help the player to perceive better the world where he's interacting or where she is interacting in the world. And the camera shake and the camera shake sensitivity are two settings that are needed to be changeable every time the player want to change it, because the camera shake can give some distraction or is not good for some people. So it's better to take it on or off, but based always on the shoes of the player. And in this case, we have also included a reset camera position. This type of elements can help the player to reset the camera back to the character. This is essential to give the character a standard view of the character and help him to continue to play in the map. And the motion blur, we need to give always an on-off option for these elements. As you can see here in the right part of the screen, here is the background with the elements that are completely blurred in this case. And some of these elements can be distracted or can give impossibility to perceive better the elements on the screen. In this other case, instead, we have a precisely and clean image because the motion blur is off. Now let's talk about the bloom instead. And the bloom is a little bit different because we are removing the intense of the light. In this case, you can see the bloom on is very intense. Instead, in this part, the light continue to have effect on the elements, affect the elements. But here the light is more reduced because some player can have some difficulty to see this type of light. Then we should turn should give them the possibility to turn on and off this option as well. Then now we will talk about video sequences. Now I will show you another video. Okay, this is a different that is going to a fight. There is an overlap here, and the cutscene will start automatically because we are talking about overlaps. Here we have the character that she is fighting. Here we start the battle. So the gameplay starts at the end of the cutscene. But at the moment we have not skipped the cutscene. In every game, in my opinion, there should be a good thing: add a pause menu and skip elements, like I'm making in this case. we have a continue button and also skip button. When I press the skip button, we are going directly to the version of the fight, of the boss fight. In this case, I would also add that it's very much important add this type of element, because some player have the needed to skip the cutscene, maybe because they don't want to see it, maybe they don't need to see it, or other type of condition that we cannot imagine. And so it's better always give also them the possibility to pause the game, because if they cannot pause the cutscene, they are obligated to watch the entire cutscene, and this is not good. They need to pause the cutscene and restart it, or maybe skip it. Then let's return to the presentation here. Here is a better picture, of course, of this element, and we have included also the comfort prompt and the back prompt in the case they want to return and not use the button in the menu. And let's talk a little bit about the graphic, and then we will talk also about the audio part. The graphics need to be well implemented. The texture repetition need to avoid it, because this is the extraction element can create also some confusion to some specific player. So we need to keep attention very much to the repetition of the texture. And so we need to create better textures that we are going to apply on 2D or 3D elements, and differentiate it as much as possible. And of course, avoid flashes, because the flashes, we made more than 3 bits of flashes in 1 second. This is very bad, because it can cause seizures, epileptic attacks. So we need to avoid and limit these flashes as we can when we are developing an app or a video game. And of course, here is another picture that I showed you before when we are talking about the reinforcement of the visual effects, but there are also the audio. So let's talk a bit about the audio alternatives. We have to implement in the games, in my opinion, more volume as possible when they are implemented or to be implemented in the game. Let's take a look to this video too. I made a video on the classes in particular, but I will talk to you also on the sound spatialization. We have the settings. We are going to audio settings. We have a master volume that is supposed to remove completely the sound or reactivate the sound. But in this case, we are going to lower the volume of the music, and the other sounds are still active at the max volume.
Help! Help!
And yeah, and now we are going to remove instead completely the music. Okay. Here are the footsteps.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Bott, and I'm a friend of X.
There is the voice talking. So there are the voices that are in a specific channel in this case, and we need to also try to remove a bit of volume on the sound effects. Now the footsteps are very low. Now return to the audio. We remove completely the sound effects. This is valid for every type of sound. Now we are going to remove completely the voice volume. And now we can just read it, but not hearing it. And we still hear the UI volume, that is the interface volume. This is important because some player need maybe to shut off the audio of the interface, but some other need it because the audio sounds that we are implemented here is helpful to understand what we are doing also, because the sounds that we have studied to implement this type of game are positive and negative, and there is a specific sound also for the navigation, affirmative sounds, negation sounds. These this can be defined as a recognizable sounds. And here we are back to all the sounds. And I would like also talk a bit about spatialization sound a bit more, here I have included a picture where you can see two spheres. Here is a little sphere that is making the volume at its max level. And the second sphere is the attenuation. So we need to implement the attenuation because we can give an help to the players to orientate themselves in the game. So that if they have a visual limitation, they can always hear the sound in a spatialization method, because they are 3D sound in this case, because we are giving them some volume that is changing based on the trigger. And this is very helpful also to for the stereo speakers, for example, we can recognize if the sound is at right or at left or back or in front. And also the music changer is important. I will show you very quickly another video. Here is a gameplay video, and some part you have just seen it. But we are going in the part of the fight. That you can see again the same element as you've seen. Here the music is changing. It's more aggressive because we are in fight. But when we are concluding the boss fight or the battle, the music will change because we are in a calm state. So this is important to give the player a better feedback on the situation or on the status of the player. Because you need to recognize with the sounds also these status change. And to conclude it, I would like to say that it's very much important, in my opinion, that when we are creating a video game or an app, we need to care at all of these elements, because all of these elements, visual, audio, or motorial, need to be implemented as well, because we need to think at several types of people that can approach to our game. And we need to create our game with more user-friendly elements as possible. The user-friendly is the key to create a good software and a good app or a good video game, because the companies or individual developers need to give some confrontation or also some elements that the player can customize for their benefits. And in my opinion, it's very much important that these elements will be included to make better inclusive design, to respect the need of the specific type of player. Because if we create a user-friendly type of software, this will help the company, but also the user that are approaching, the final user that is approaching to the app, and the company will benefit from this. And I think all people benefit from these elements. Thank you very much. And yeah, you can also rewatch this video if you want on my YouTube channel. And you can also download the PDF of the presentation if you want, and check out more elements also on my website too. My website is cardeisart.com. Thank you very much for following my live.
Alessandro, thank you very much for that. Really enjoyed actually seeing all those amazing elements that should be considered when making a game accessible and making it as flexible for as many different players as possible. And not all of that's always necessarily related to disability. Sometimes it's just different gaming preferences as well. So actually, thank you very much for that. David, sorry, Alessandro.
Yeah, this is important because we need to think also that, yeah, some people can have some difficult, but as you say, not all people that have difficult have this ability too. So this is hoped to be user-friendly to people that have not disability difficult, but also for people that have disability difficult.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, Alessandro. David, throw to you if you've got any questions.
Okay, thanks, Stuart. Nothing in on the YouTube chat at the moment. And yeah, thanks, Alessandro. That was really interesting and a good job of presenting alongside the video. That worked really well. Do you think some types of games lend themselves to accessibility, customization, personalization better than others?
There are a few games that have better customization of yes, alternative visual and audio, and also motorial accessibility settings. In this type of game, generally are AAA or quadruple A games because they have more budget, of course. The Sony game, for example, have more accessibility settings than the other games, for example, but also some Xbox game have a very good. In this case are games that are produced by the studios that are under Sony or Xbox. This is why they can invest more budget on the accessibility settings. But in my opinion, also the individual game developer, if he can follow or she can follow the accessibility guidelines or the web content accessibility guidelines, can be able to implement these features in small games. Is not needed to implement everything, of course, because in the indie game could be also for just a few settings. But yeah, the thing is that we need to include at least the most important elements, like the subtitles and maybe the color blindness mode. That could be helpful. When I'm talking about Sony games or Xbox, I'm thinking, for example, from the part of Sony, some game like God of War, Ragnarok, that has a lot of element of inclusive design and accessibility, and also Horizon Forbidden West, this type of games. From the part of Xbox, I think Hi-Fi Rush, that's one of the best game that has implemented very good accessibility settings, especially in my opinion for the text and the dialogues. They added also icons for the character that change expression. Instead, in my game, I'm still developing with it, but we are going to introduce more animation for the talk because I think that the animation could be a nice reinforcement to the talk during the talk with an NPC.
Yeah. You see a lot of examples in puzzle games, to sort of demonstrate color differences and adaptations there. But yeah, you're sort of seeing these things in a much wider range of games now. It seems nowadays.
Yeah, I have seen differently between a lot of games. Some games, for example, have less accessibility because, for example, they don't have a skip function for the cutscene, or the only way to skip the cutscene is watching the first one, and maybe later you can skip, but just if you are watching the first time. I can understand that this maybe can be helpful to avoid that the player skip the cutscene the first time, but there should be a prompt that can give us the possibility to be sure that we are that we want to skip the cutscene, or we want to stay in the cutscene. So this is why I think it's better include the pause menu. Talking about some games that has less accessibility, they are great games, but they have less accessibility because they didn't introduce yet, not at all, at least. For example, the Dark Souls games that are excellent games from the point of game, but from the point of gameplay, probably they need to include some elements like the colorblind mode, or a better choice possibility maybe of the font, because the font is introduced in the game because is a visual choice is important, but in some AAA games there should be also the possibility to change the font, because in that case maybe the change of font could be helpful to some player that maybe need to read better the text. And for example, in our game, we have included the Atkinson hyperlegible test. That is a very good text. Is made by the BrailleInstitute.org, and this text is completely free, can be used for free project, also for commercial project. And this text is very good because if you blur the text, you can still continue to read it because yeah, you cannot see it perfectly. But this type of text is very good because also if you blur it, yeah, you can have a possibility to read it also if blurred.
Yeah, makes sense.
David, I might jump in there.
Yeah.
If you don't mind. Alessandro,
Hello.
the web content accessibility guidelines is probably not the most suited to the gaming community for helping make games accessible. I know there have been efforts out there to come up with useful frameworks and guidelines to support game developers to make more accessible games, such as the accessible player experiences, the APX framework. Do you have any thoughts on, or have you used any of those other frameworks to sort of help guide you with all the effort you've gone through to make your game more accessible?
Yeah, to make more accessible a game, if you don't want to follow all the points of the accessibility game guidelines, would be a good element. Maybe try to test a bit a game with some player that maybe can have some difficulties to see elements or hear elements. If we have some friends, for example, if we are indie developer, maybe it could be a good idea to involve some friends to give her or give us the feedback that we need to have during the development phases, in my opinion. This is the best way to understand if an element can be good for people like colorblindness people or deaf people, or maybe people that have cognitive difficulties. So yeah, I think if someone don't want to follow all these points, maybe the best thing is try to make some tests of the game involving more people possible, friends, or maybe some external people to the family, and so on.
Oh, thank you, Alessandro.
You're welcome. Thank you to
Alessandro.
I hope to have answered the question.
No, that was fine.
Alessandro, you focused on the visual and sort of audio alternatives in Robin Tech. Do you plan to broaden that out to other disability considerations like cognitive disabilities? I know you acknowledge people with different reading speeds and things like that. You know, is that a direction you might take?
Yeah, I want to make it possible for the game to be played from more people as possible. So yeah, I'm focalizing to the visual and audio alternatives, but I'm also focalizing to the motorial alternatives because it's also important to think about the possibility that are players that can have some difficulty to use the gamepad or the keyboard. So in some cases, differently from what we have seen here, I would like also to add a few words about the motorial part. In the control part, we need to have a specific possibility to the player or the final user to change the button configuration. Not at all, but maybe in part. There are people that maybe can play with only one hand, or there are people that cannot play with them, but they need to move other type of, we need to use other type of hardware to play. So the best thing is also make some tests with some changeable motorial parts, and also with some pressing input, for example. One thing that, for example, I didn't show you is the spring part, but the spring part, for example, in some games, you need to press the button, the thumbstick button here, and this type of button should be also changeable between the left thumbstick and the right thumbstick. If we don't make it changeable, maybe some people can have some difficulty, but the most important thing is to give the possibility instead to not keep on pressing the button here all the times when we are sprinting or making an action, but give the possibility instead of just click and go to make the action. So I would like to work a bit on this in the future months, and I will go to work also in improvement of these things that I'm working on. And so I will go to introduce a few more settings that maybe can help better the players to have a perception of the game. This is a little bit different, of course, from what the game is from the point of the demo, of course. But I think that one very good point is that when you follow the web content accessibility guidelines of the accessibility guidelines, or just a few elements that can be good for maybe colorblind people or deaf peoples or cognitive peoples, this would be very much a good help also for the developers, because you are doing something for the users, not only because you are trying to produce a game to sell it. Produce a game to sell it mean also be respectful of the user and the players.
Yeah, no, that's a good message. Yeah, there's just been a comment in the chat. Could you say again what the accessible game framework was and where we can find it? And does this framework offer help for creating accessible XR?
Okay, yeah, the accessible should be okay as a let's talk from this point of view. There are from the experience reality a different type of element that we should be considering, but some element can be considered for the type of games, in my opinion. So some elements is not working for a specific type of game. You need to consider that the type of game can change it. So the accessibility asset should be changed based on what you need to present on the screen, or from the point of view of the nature of the game.
Okay. So I don't know if I should go here, but the push to make gaming more accessible has received quite unfortunate and quite unpleasant pushback from gamers who sort of feel aggrieved that games have been dumbed down or watered down, or it's the creative visions being compromised somehow. And it does seem the tide seems to be sort of turning, against that, and many high-profile games are having these settings and things. Have you encountered any of those attitudes?
Personally,
Any sort of
I don't
pushback?
think that the accessibility is giving problem to the concept of the game. I think that the accessibility setting and includes design is reinforcing the game, because it's giving the possibility to more players to have access to these elements instead. So it's not to think that these elements are valid for every person. This requires a bit of more developing, of course, but is not ruining the games. This is giving more possibility and more possibility not only for the users, but also for the company to create a better experience, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
No, that's good.
David, Alessandro, thank you both for that. We do need to call time on this because we're at that moment. Thank you again both for the Q&A session just now. That's been fantastic. And if you've liked this session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to youtube.com/inclusivedesign24 to be kept in the loop on our future events. Inclusive Design 24 is brought to you with thanks to our supporters: Barrier Break, Intopia, Infoaxia, Tetralogical, Intuit, Adrian Roselli, LLC, Assistive Labs, the Law Office of Laney Feingold, Skyscanner, and Vispero. Inclusive Design 24 will be back on the hour with our next session. See you then.